Betrayed by her divorced mom, she married a stranger to survive, only to discover he owns a tech empire. 24 hours ago, she'd had a mother. 24 hours ago, she'd had a couch to sleep on and leftover Chinese food in the fridge. Now she had nothing but the clothes on her back and a trash bag filled with everything she owned. Have you ever made a decision that terrified you, but felt like your only choice? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She stood on the courthouse steps at 19, wearing a thrift store jacket and clutching a stranger's phone number, about to marry a man she'd never met because dying alone seemed worse than living as a lie. The Minneapolis winter cut through her bones like glass shards. 3 days sleeping in doorways had taught her that January doesn't care about your pride. Her fingers, purple and stiff, fumbled with the crumpled paper where she'd written his number after responding to that Craigslist ad. Marriage for mutual benefit. Clean record. Respectful arrangement. No strings attached. 24 hours ago, she'd had a mother. 24 hours ago, she'd had a couch to sleep on and leftover Chinese food in the fridge. Now she had nothing but the clothes on her back and a trash bag filled with everything she owned. You're grown, her mother had screamed, fresh off divorce number 4. Go figure it out. The door slam still echoed in her ears. Marriage to a stranger wasn't plan A. It was the only plan left. Have you ever been so desperate that crazy started looking reasonable? When your own mother throws you away, what do you have left to lose? The courthouse lobby smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Kira Davis, soon to be Kira something else, checked the time on the wall clock. He was late. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe this was all some sick joke. Kira, she turned. The man walking toward her looked nothing like she'd expected. Tall, but not imposing. Brown hair that needed cutting. Soft brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt like he'd just finished working on a car. But his hands were soft. Too soft for someone claiming to fix cars for a living. Kyle, he said, extending one of those soft hands. Thank you for coming. His voice was gentle, not demanding or creepy like she'd feared. When their fingers touched, warmth shot up her arm. The first human contact she'd had in days that wasn't someone telling her to move along. You sure about this? She asked, studying his face for signs of regret. Are you? Fair question. But what if the stranger offering salvation wasn't who he claimed to be? The ceremony took 11 minutes. No flowers, no music, just a tired judge and 2 witnesses pulled from the hallway. When Kyle slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, his thumb brushed her knuckle and lingered there for a heartbeat longer than necessary. You may kiss the bride. Kyle leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. Only if you want to. She nodded. His lips touched hers, soft and brief, tasting like coffee and promises she wasn't sure either of them could keep. As she signed Kira Abramson for the first time, she noticed his hands again, too soft for someone claiming to fix cars for a living. The first lie she'd catch, but far from the last. Have you ever made a decision that terrified you, but felt like your only choice? Drop a comment below. She expected a cramped apartment with a desperate man. Instead, she found herself in a remote cabin with someone who seemed to be hiding from the world as much as she was running from hers. The drive took 2 hours through snow-covered Minnesota backroads. Kyle's truck was newer than she'd expected, cleaner too. The radio played soft country music while he drove with the confidence of someone who knew these roads by heart. How long have you lived out here? She asked, watching endless pine trees flash past her window. 6 months. I like the quiet. The cabin appeared through the trees like something from postcard. Wood siding, stone chimney puffing white smoke, windows glowing warm yellow against the winter landscape. It wasn't big, but it wasn't the shack she'd imagined either. Home sweet home, Kyle said, parking beside a stack of split firewood. Inside, the cabin was sparse but comfortable. Leather couch facing a stone fireplace. Kitchen with granite counters that didn't match the rustic exterior. No photographs on the walls, no personal touches except for a shelf lined with thick technical books. And computers. 3 of them, screens dark but humming with power. What do you do with all those? Kira asked, dropping her trash bag by the door. Kyle's shoulders tensed. Work stuff. boring accounting programs. Another lie. She was getting good at spotting them. "Your room's down the hall," he said quickly. "Bathroom's across from it. I'll take the couch." "I could take the couch." "No." His voice was firm. "You've been sleeping rough for 3 days. Take the bed." How did he know that? She hadn't told him about the doorways or the bus station bench. Her survival instincts, honed by years of navigating her mother's chaos, whispered warnings. But where else could she go? The bedroom was small but clean. Double bed with blue flannel sheets. Empty dresser. Window overlooking the backyard where she could see Kyle chopping wood, his flannel shirt discarded despite the cold. She watched from behind the curtain as his axe split logs with practiced efficiency. His shoulders were broader than the loose shirt had suggested, muscles moving under pale skin that rarely saw sun. Wade paused to wipe sweat from his forehead. She stepped back from the window, heat rising in her cheeks. Why was she staring? This was a business arrangement. Mutual benefit. No strings attached. That first night, she heard him on the phone speaking in hushed tones about maintaining the cover and staying invisible. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. His voice too low to make out specific words, but urgent enough to keep her awake. What's scarier, living with a stranger or facing the streets alone? Tell me your thoughts. When she confronted him the next morning over coffee, his explanation about avoiding creditors felt rehearsed, like he'd been practicing lies. "I owe some people money," he said, stirring sugar into his mug without meeting her eyes. "It's easier to lay low until things cool down." The explanation made sense. Lots of people had money troubles. But something in his tone, the way his gaze shifted to the computers when he thought she wasn't looking, told her there was more to Kyle Abramson than bad debt and car repair. Sharing space with a stranger is awkward. Sharing space with a stranger who watches you like you might disappear is something else entirely. 3 weeks into their arrangement, they'd settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Kyle made coffee every morning at 6 sharp. Strong and black, the way her mother never bothered to make it. Kira cooked dinner because watching him attempt scrambled eggs was painful. He worked during the day, fingers flying across multiple keyboards while she applied for jobs in the nearest town, 15 miles away. The cabin had 1 landline and no cell service, which Kyle claimed was due to the remote location. Another half-truth, she suspected. "Any luck today?" he'd ask every evening when she returned from job hunting. The diner might have something next week. He'd nod like waiting tables was the most important career in the world. Never once suggested she didn't need to work, never made her feel like a charity case. For someone supposedly broke enough to need a marriage arrangement, he was remarkably generous with grocery money. The kitchen became their neutral territory. Morning coffee and evening dinners marking time in a life neither had planned but both desperately needed. Kyle was a good listener, asking about her day without prying into her past. She returned the favor, though his stories about fixing transmissions sounded increasingly creative. "Hand me that wrench," he said one evening, teaching her to adjust the wood stove's damper. He stood behind her, guiding her hands on the metal lever. His chest pressed against her back, solid and warm. His breath stirred the hair near her ear as he explained proper airflow. "Feel that? The way the heat changes when you turn it." She felt it. The heat from the stove, the heat from his body, the heat pooling low in her stomach at his proximity. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were roommates with legal papers, nothing more. "Yeah," she whispered, hyper-aware of every place they touched. When the job at Murphy's Diner finally came through, Kyle celebrated by cooking dinner himself, grilled cheese that was only slightly burned, and tomato soup from a can. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his water glass. "To survival," she corrected, clinking her glass against his. But survival was starting to feel like something more. The way he left extra blankets by her door during cold snaps. How he never complained when she stayed up late reading his technical books, trying to understand the world he claimed wasn't his. The morning she'd found him asleep at his computers, and she'd covered him with a quilt without thinking about it. Have you ever felt safer with a stranger than with your own family? Share your experience below. The night everything changed started like any other. Dinner, dishes, him disappearing into his work while she read on the couch. She was halfway through a thriller when she heard it. a soft thud from behind the bookshelf. Curious, she approached the tall wooden shelf lined with those technical manuals. Running her fingers along the spines, she found a gap where one book pushed inward like a button. The shelf swung open. When she found the hidden room behind the bookshelf filled with monitors, cash, and fake IDs, Kyle's face went white. "I can explain," he whispered, but the fear in his eyes suggested even he wasn't sure where to start. The man who married her to save her from freezing was about to confess secrets that could get them both killed. The hidden room hummed with electronics and paranoia. 6 monitors displayed security feeds from around the property. Cash, more money than Kira had ever seen, sat stacked in neat bundles beside 3 different driver's licenses, all with Kyle's photo but different names. "Sit down," Kyle said, his voice hollow. She remained standing. "Who are you?" "My name really is Kyle. Kyle Abramson. Everything else." He ran his hands through his hair. "Everything else is complicated." The security monitors showed empty forest from 6 different angles. Motion sensors blinked green in the corner of each screen. This wasn't about avoiding creditors. "Are you in witness protection?" "Something like that." Kyle's laugh held no humor. "I used to work for a tech company. Big contracts, government stuff. My partner and I developed security software that could..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Let's just say the wrong people wanted it. So you stole it?" "No, he did. Victor Reeves, my business partner. He sold our entire system to competitors and blamed me for the theft. Made it look like I was the one taking bribes, selling company secrets." Kira studied his face. The fear there was real, but so was the pain. "What happened?" "Someone tried to kill me. Car bomb in the company parking garage. I got lucky. Had food poisoning that day. Never made it to the office. But they tried twice more before I figured out Victor wasn't just stealing code. He was covering his tracks by eliminating anyone who could expose him." The monitors cast blue light across Kyle's features as he explained how he'd faked his death and disappeared. The cabin, the fake identity, even the marriage, all part of staying invisible while he gathered evidence against his former partner. "You married me to maintain your cover." "At first, yes." A single man living alone raises questions. A married couple trying to start fresh? Nobody looks twice. The truth stung, but she understood. Survival made people do desperate things. She'd married a stranger for shelter. He'd married her for camouflage. "But that's not why I want you to stay," Kyle continued, stepping closer. "These past few weeks, you've made this place feel like more than just a hideout. You made it feel like home. Have you ever felt like you were living in 2 different worlds? How did you bridge that gap? Share your experience." Before she could respond, one of the monitors chimed. Motion detected on the north perimeter. Kyle's face went rigid as he scanned the feeds. "There," he whispered, pointing to a screen showing 2 figures moving through the trees. "They found us." Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. "Who are they?" "People who want me dead." Kyle was already moving, pulling weapons from hidden compartments. "We have maybe 5 minutes before they reach the cabin." "What do we do?" Kyle met her eyes, and she saw something there that made her stomach flip. Not just fear for himself, but terror for her safety. "We run." As Kyle showed her the threatening messages and surveillance photos on one of his computers, Kira realized the danger wasn't just his anymore. Someone had been watching the cabin, watching them, and the last photo was of her walking to town alone. Fear has a way of burning through the walls we build. And that night, with danger circling their sanctuary, Kira stopped caring about boundaries. They ran through snow-covered forest for 2 miles before Kyle led her to an abandoned hunting lodge. The building looked ready to collapse, but inside was surprisingly solid. Kyle had prepared for this. Water, food, and sleeping bags were already stashed in a hidden compartment. "You've done this before," Kira observed, watching him check the perimeter. 3 times in 6 months. "Victor's good at finding me, but I'm better at disappearing." The lodge had no electricity, no heat except what they could generate themselves. Kyle built a small fire in the stone hearth while Kira inventoried their supplies. Enough for 3 days, maybe 4 if they were careful. "I'm sorry," Kyle said as they sat by the fire. "You didn't sign up for this." "What did I sign up for?" He looked at her across the flickering flames. I don't know anymore. The admission hung between them like a challenge. What were they to each other? Convenient strangers? Reluctant allies? Something more dangerous? I know what I signed up for, Kira said quietly. Survival. Same as you. And now I'm still here. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across the lodge walls. Outside, wind howled through bare branches, but inside felt safe. Isolated. Private. Kyle reached across the space between them, fingers brushing her cheek. I never wanted to put you in danger. I've been in danger my whole life. At least now I'm not facing it alone. When he kissed her, it wasn't like their courthouse wedding, careful and polite. This kiss was hungry, desperate, filled with weeks of unspoken tension. She responded without thinking, hands tangling in his hair as months of careful distance dissolved. Are you sure? He whispered against her lips. Instead of answering, she pushed him back onto the sleeping bags, straddling his hips. His hands found the hem of her sweater, sliding underneath to trace warm skin. I've wanted this, she breathed as he lifted the sweater over her head. Since that first night, watching you chop wood. You were watching? Every day. His laugh was low, pleased. I was hoping you were. They made love by firelight, slow and reverent despite the urgency in their touch. Kyle worshipped her body like something precious, hands and mouth mapping every curve while she arched beneath him. When he finally moved inside her, she felt complete for the first time since leaving her mother's house. Sometimes fear makes us reach for what matters most. Have you ever found love in the midst of chaos? Afterward, she lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat return to normal. The fire had burned low, casting the lodge in intimate shadows. There's something else you need to know about who I really am, Kyle said, fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Before he could continue, car lights swept across the lodge windows. Kyle went rigid beneath her. Get dressed. Now. They pulled on clothes in frantic silence as engines rumbled outside. Through a gap in the boarded windows, Kira saw two black SUVs positioned to block any escape routes. In the afterglow, as she traced patterns on his chest, Kyle whispered words that changed everything. There's something else you need to know about who I really am. Before he could continue, car lights swept across their window. Someone had found them. Running in the middle of the night should have been terrifying. Instead, it was the first time Kira felt truly alive. Kyle moved with military precision, leading her out the lodge's back window, while voices shouted commands from the front. They dropped into snow that came up to their knees, cold biting through their hastily dressed bodies. Stay low. Follow exactly where I step. They moved through the forest like ghosts, Kyle navigating by moonlight and instinct. Behind them, flashlight beams swept through the trees. Dogs barked in the distance. How many? Kira whispered. 6, maybe 8. How do you know? I used to do this for a living. Another piece of the puzzle. Kyle wasn't just a tech developer. He had training. Military or worse. They reached a frozen creek bed that wound deeper into the wilderness. Kyle pulled out a burner phone, checked their location, then smashed it against a rock. They're tracking everything, he explained. Phones, credit cards, anything electronic. Through frost-covered trees they ran, breath creating clouds in the bitter air, footsteps muffled by snow that sparkled like broken diamonds under the moon. Kyle's hands stayed locked around hers, pulling her forward when exhaustion tried to drag her down. After an hour of running, they reached another cabin, smaller, older, hidden in a grove of massive pines. Safe house number 2, she gasped. Something like that. Inside was basic but warm. Kyle lit a propane heater while Kira collapsed onto a cot, adrenaline finally wearing off. Are you hurt? Kyle knelt beside her, checking for injuries. Just tired. She caught his face between her hands. Are you going to tell me who you really are now? You won't believe me. Try me. Kyle sat on the edge of the cot, close enough that she could feel heat radiating from his body. My real name is Kyle Abramson. I founded a company called Porches Security. We developed cybersecurity systems for government agencies. Okay, the company is worth $12 billion. I'm worth $12 billion. Kira stared at him. What? Victor didn't just steal our code. He staged a coup, convinced the board I was unstable, embezzling funds. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd frozen my assets and put a price on my head. $12 billion. The number was so large it felt fictional. You're telling me I married a billionaire? A dead billionaire, as far as the world knows. Victor made sure everyone believes I died in that car bombing. Have you ever discovered strength you didn't know you had when someone you cared about was in danger? The revelation should have changed everything, but Kira found herself focused on more immediate concerns. The people hunting us, they work for Victor, some of them. Others are freelancers who want the bounty he's offering. How much? 5 million. Dead or alive? Kira whistled low. I'm expensive to be married to. Kyle's laugh was strained. I never should have gotten you involved in this. Too late now. She pulled him down onto the cot beside her. We're in this together. The cabin was small, the cot smaller. They lay face to face in the narrow space, sharing warmth and whispered plans. When Kyle's hand found the small of her back, pulling her closer, she didn't resist. This is crazy, she murmured against his neck. Which part? All of it. They made love with desperate intensity, hands and mouths frantic with the knowledge that dawn might bring death. Kyle moved inside her like he was trying to memorize the feeling, and she met each thrust with equal desperation. As dawn broke through the lodge windows, Kyle finally said the words that shattered her understanding of everything. My real name is Kyle Abramson. I founded Fortress Security. I'm worth $12 billion, and the people hunting us want me dead. Learning your homeless husband is secretly a billionaire should feel like winning the lottery. Instead, it felt like stepping into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Kira sat on the edge of the narrow cot, processing Kyle's confession as morning light filtered through the cabin's small windows. $12 billion. The number felt impossible, like something from movies or news stories about people who lived in different worlds. Say something, Kyle pleaded from where he sat across the room, giving her space to think. I married a homeless man, she said slowly. At least, that's who I thought I married. I know how this looks. Do you? She stood, pacing the small cabin. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you lied about everything. Your job, your life, your reasons for marrying me. Not everything. What part was real? Kyle's silence was answer enough. The hunting lodge filled with tension thicker than the morning mist, her voice echoing off wooden walls as she demanded to know what else he'd hidden from her. The danger is real, Kyle said finally. Victor Reeves was my business partner for 8 years. We built Fortress Security from nothing, 2 college dropouts with big ideas about internet security. But success changed him. Kyle's laptop, hidden in another supply cache, showed her photos of Victor Reeves. Tall, silver-haired, expensively dressed. He looked like money and power. When government contracts started rolling in, Victor wanted to expand faster than our tech could handle. He began cutting corners, selling preliminary software to private contractors before it was ready. That doesn't sound like grounds for murder. It is when those contracts include foreign governments. When our software fails, people die. Intelligence agents, military personnel, civilians in war zones. Kira studied the screen showing financial records, email chains, bank transfers. If Kyle was lying, he'd created an elaborate fiction. Victor blamed me when things went wrong. Set up fake accounts in my name, forged documents showing I was taking bribes from Chinese intelligence. Were you? No. Kyle's voice was firm, but I couldn't prove it. By the time I realized what Victor was doing, he'd convinced the board, the FBI, even my own security team that I was a traitor. The first murder attempt had been subtle. Food poisoning that landed Kyle in the hospital instead of the office parking garage where a car bomb exploded. The second attempt was more direct, a sniper's bullet that missed by inches. That's when I decided to disappear. And the marriage? Cover story. A single man hiding in the wilderness raises questions. A couple starting fresh after financial troubles? Nobody looks twice. If someone you loved had lied to protect you, would you forgive them? How big would the lie have to be to break your trust? Kira wanted to stay angry, but she understood survival decisions. She'd made plenty of her own. So what now? We run forever. I've been gathering evidence. Financial records, communications, proof that Victor staged everything. Once I have enough. Kyle's laptop chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as VR. Victor, Kyle breathed. The message was short. I know you're alive. Time to come home. Attached was a video file. Kyle hesitated before opening it, then clicked play. The video showed a news broadcast from that morning. The headline made Kira's stomach drop. Billionaire tech founder Kyle Abramson found dead in Minnesota cabin fire. Body recovered. Through the lodge window, they watched news vans surrounding their abandoned cabin on Kyle's phone. The headline made Kira's blood freeze. Billionaire tech founder Kyle Abramson found dead in Minnesota cabin fire. Body recovered. Someone wanted the world to think he was already gone. The reporter stood in front of their burned cabin, describing the tragic death of the reclusive tech mogul and his unnamed wife. Kira watched herself become a widow to a man sitting right beside her. Being declared dead gave them the perfect cover, until Kira realized that meant she was officially a widow to a man very much alive and in her arms. The news coverage was everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Every major network picked up the story of Kyle Abramson's death. The burned cabin, the recovered bodies, the tragic end to a brilliant career cut short by corporate betrayal. Bodies? Kira asked, watching the broadcast on Kyle's laptop. Victor's thorough. He probably had corpses planted before setting the fire. They moved to a third safe house, this one overlooking Lake Superior. The remote Wisconsin location gave Kyle access to encrypted internet connections and Kira her first hot shower in 3 days. How many of these places do you have? Enough. Kyle was monitoring news feeds, tracking the stories spread across social media. I've been preparing for this day for months. The safe house perched on a bluff overlooking Lake Superior, waves crashing against rocks below like nature's own white noise machine, drowning out the sound of a billionaire learning to grieve himself. Watching his own funeral coverage broke something in Kyle. She found at the laptop that evening, shoulders shaking as he read obituaries written by colleagues who believed Victor's lies. They think I was a traitor, he whispered. 8 years building that company, and they'll remember me as the man who sold out his country. Kira sat beside him, reading tributes from employees who'd worked for Kyle, government officials who'd trusted Fortress security systems, families of agents whose lives have been saved by their technology. Look at this one, she said, pointing to a comment from a former employee. Kyle Abramson was the most ethical man I ever worked for. He'd rather lose a contract than compromise his principles. One voice against hundreds. Sometimes one voice is enough. That night, they made love with different energy than before. Not desperate or frantic, but tender and thorough. Kyle touched her like he was memorizing every curve, every response. When he moved inside her, his eyes never left her face. I love you, he whispered against her lips. The words should have scared her. Instead, they felt inevitable. I love you too. They were no longer strangers seeking mutual benefit. They were partners, allies, lovers facing an impossible situation together. Have you ever had to become someone completely new to survive? What would you miss most about your old life? The next morning brought complications. Kyle's death had triggered a complex web of legal procedures. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His company stock was in free fall. And according to their marriage certificate, Kira was now the sole heir to whatever remained of his estate. I don't want your money, she said over breakfast. You might not have a choice. Legally, you're my widow. Everything I own now belongs to you. Everything you owned is frozen. Not everything. Kyle showed her accounts he'd hidden from Victor, offshore holdings that existed under different names. Even those amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. I can't touch that money without revealing I'm alive. But I could. Yes. The implications were staggering. Kira Davis, who'd owned nothing but a trash bag full of clothes 6 months ago, was now one of the wealthiest women in America. On paper, as they watched Kyle's memorial service on live stream, Kira spotted a face in the crowd that made her stomach drop. Her mother, dabbing fake tears with a tissue, already positioning herself as the grieving mother-in-law she'd never been. "That's her," Kira said, pointing at the screen. "That's my mother." Kyle's expression darkened as he watched the woman who'd thrown Kira onto the streets, now performing grief for cameras. "She doesn't know you're alive? No one does except us." On screen, Kira's mother approached reporters, speaking in hushed tones about her poor daughter and the tragic love story that had ended in flames. "She's already working the angles," Kira observed, probably thinking about book deals and movie rights. Kyle's jaw clenched as they watched the performance. The woman who'd abandoned her daughter in winter was now capitalizing on her death. "What do you want to do about her?" Kira stared at the screen, watching her mother's calculated tears. For the first time since their escape began, she smiled. "Nothing. Let her grieve the daughter she threw away. She'll never know how much she lost." The mother who threw her away suddenly wanted back in. Now that her homeless daughter was technically a billionaire widow. The burner phone rang like an alarm through their peaceful morning, her mother's voice crackling through the speaker with false concern and barely concealed greed. "Kira, baby, I saw the news about your husband. I'm so sorry for your loss." Kyle's jaw clenched as he watched Kira's face transform. 6 months of healing crumbled in seconds. "You're sorry." Kira's voice came out flat. "You threw me out in December. You told me to figure it out myself. I was going through a rough time with a divorce, honey. You know how your stepfather was. I wasn't thinking straight." The lies rolled off her mother's tongue like water. Kyle stepped closer, his hand finding Kira's shoulder. She leaned into his touch without thinking. "What do you want, Mom? I want to help you through this difficult time. A young woman shouldn't have to deal with funeral arrangements and legal matters alone." "I've been researching Kyle's estate." "There it is." Kira laughed, but no humor reached her eyes. "How long did it take you to Google his net worth? That's not fair. I'm your mother. Mothers don't abandon their children on the street." Kyle took the phone from her trembling hands. His voice came out deadly calm. "Mrs. Chun, this is Kyle." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "You're supposed to be dead. Disappointing, I know. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Kira alone. Forever. If you contact her again, I'll make sure every news outlet knows exactly how you treated your daughter when she needed you most. You can't threaten me. I have rights. You gave up your rights when you slammed that door." Kyle's voice dropped lower. "Kira doesn't need your help. She doesn't need your money. And she sure as hell doesn't need your guilt." He ended the call and pulled the battery from the phone. Kira stood frozen, staring at the dead device. She saw the funeral coverage. "She probably thinks I'm inheriting everything. Are you okay?" "I should be angry." Kira's voice cracked. "But I just feel empty. Like she took the last piece of the daughter who used to love her." Kyle pulled her against his chest. She fit perfectly there now, her head tucked under his chin. "She doesn't get to define you anymore. What if she's right? What if I'm just using you like she would?" Kyle tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You married me when you thought I was broke. You stayed when people were hunting me. You chose me over safety every single day." His lips found hers, soft at first, then desperate. She tasted like coffee and determination, like the woman who'd saved his life without even knowing it. He lifted her onto the kitchen counter, stepping between her knees. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. "Show me I'm not her," she whispered against his mouth. His answer came in the way he touched her. Reverent, possessive, claiming. His hands mapped her body like she was treasure he'd been searching for his whole life. She wrapped her legs around his waist, grinding against him through their clothes. The counter was cold against her back as he laid her down, but his hands were warm, so warm. "You're nothing like her," he growled, pulling her shirt over her head. "You're brave. You're loyal. You're mine." The words sent heat straight through her. She arched under his touch, every nerve alive. Later, as they lay tangled on the living room floor, clothes scattered like battle flags, Kira's phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. "Saw the interview with your grieving mother-in-law. Touching performance. Too bad she has no idea her daughter is about to join her son-in-law in the afterlife." Kyle read over her shoulder, his whole body going rigid. "They have her. Through the window, They could see a black sedan parked at the end of their long driveway, waiting. Have you ever given someone who hurt you a second chance if they only wanted you for what you could give them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Saving the mother who abandoned her meant walking into an ambush, but some chains can only be broken by choosing to wear them one last time. The abandoned warehouse in Detroit looked like a mouth full of broken teeth, shattered windows catching the last light of day as they prepared to walk into hell together. "This is insane," Kyle muttered, checking his gun for the third time. "We should call the FBI." And tell them what? That the dead billionaire and his wife got a threatening text. Kira adjusted the wire taped to her ribs. "Besides, this is personal. Your mother threw you away. You don't owe her anything." Kira looked at him across the rental car. 3 days of planning had led to this moment. 3 days of arguments, strategy, and desperate lovemaking like they were already saying goodbye. "I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it for me, to prove I'm better than the people who hurt me." Kyle's hand found hers. "You already proved that by surviving." "No, I proved I could run. Now I need to prove I can fight." The warehouse loomed ahead, broken concrete and rusted metal against the Detroit skyline. This used to be where cars got built. Now, it was where dreams came to die. "Whatever happens in there," Kyle squeezed her fingers, "know that marrying you is the most real thing I've ever done." They walked through the loading dock together, footsteps echoing in the vast space. Pigeons scattered from the rafters above, wings beating like panicked hearts. "Welcome to your resurrection, Kyle." The voice came from the shadows. Victor Reeves stepped into the light. Older than Kyle remembered, silver-haired and sharp-suited like he was attending a board meeting instead of kidnapping. Behind him, tied to a chair, sat Kira's mother. Alive, conscious, and for the first time in years, genuinely terrified. "Victor," Kyle's voice stayed steady. "Still dramatic, I see. Death suits you. Too bad it won't last." Victor gestured to the armed men positioned around the warehouse. 6 of them, military trained by the look of their stance. "Here's the deal. You sign over Fortress security to me, along with all your offshore accounts, and I'll let you walk away. You disappear again, for real this time. And my wife, she can come with you. I'm not unreasonable." Kira stepped forward. "What about my mother?" Victor's smile turned cruel. "Well, that depends on how cooperative you both are." Kira's mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse from crying. "Baby, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "Now she's sorry," Kira said quietly, "when she needs saving. The touching family reunion can wait." Victor interrupted. "Kyle, you have 60 seconds to decide. Your empire or their lives." Kyle pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. "You really think I'd come here without insurance?" "What insurance?" "The kind that's been recording everything you've said for the last 5 minutes." Kira smiled through her zip tie restraints. "Did you really think we'd come here without backup?" Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Victor's face went white. "You stupid. The FBI has been tracking you for months," Kira continued. "All we had to do was give them your location." "Ow!" Kyle held up his phone. "GPS tracker. Been broadcasting since we walked in." The warehouse doors exploded inward. FBI agents poured through like a flood, red laser sights dancing across Victor's chest. "Drop your weapons." Federal agents. Victor's men threw down their guns immediately. Ex-military knew when they were beaten. But Victor reached inside his jacket, pulling out a pistol. "If I can't have your company, nobody can." The shot rang out like thunder in the enclosed space. Kira screamed, but Kyle was already moving, tackling Victor before he could fire again. They hit the concrete hard, wrestling for the gun. Another shot, then silence. Kyle stood up slowly, Victor's gun in his hand. Blood spread across the warehouse floor, but it wasn't his. Victor Reeves lay still, eyes staring at nothing. "It's over," Kyle breathed. As FBI agents cut Kira free, she looked at her mother, really looked at her, for the first time in months. "Thank you," her mother whispered, "for saving me." Kira knelt beside the chair. "I didn't do it for you, but maybe that's okay. Would you risk everything to save someone who hurt you? What does forgiveness really cost? Let me know in the comments." Face to face with the man who destroyed his life, Kyle had to choose between the empire he'd built and the woman who'd save his soul. The warehouse echoed with a decade of betrayal as Victor emerged from shadows like a ghost from Kyle's past, her mother bound but defiant behind him. But that was before the gunshot, before Victor bled out on the concrete, before FBI agent Martinez knelt beside Kira, cutting through her restraints with practiced efficiency. "Are you hurt, Mrs. Abramson?" Mrs. Abramson. Even after everything, the name still sounded foreign. "I'm okay." Kira rubbed her wrists where the zip ties had cut. "Is he dead?" Agent Martinez glanced at Victor's body. "Very." Kyle holstered the gun, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "It was self-defense. He was going to kill us. We know. We heard everything through the wire." Martinez stood, helping Kira to her feet. "We've been building a case against Reeves for 2 years. What he did to you was just the beginning." Across the warehouse, paramedics were checking Kira's mother for injuries. She looked small in the chair, older than Kira remembered. "Fragile. The media is going to go crazy when this gets out," Martinez continued. "Dead billionaire comes back to life, takes down criminal mastermind. It's like something out of a movie." "I don't want to be in a movie," Kyle said quietly. "I just want to go home." "Where's home?" Kira asked. Kyle looked at her, really looked at her. Dirt streaked her face. Her hair was a mess. She'd never been more beautiful. "Wherever you are." 2 hours later, they walked out of the FBI field office into a storm of camera flashes and shouted questions. "Kyle, how does it feel to be alive?" "Kira, did you know your husband was a billionaire? Are you really in love, or was this all for show?" Kyle's arm tightened around Kira's waist. She leaned into him, both of them squinting against the lights. "No comment," Kyle said firmly, pushing through the crowd toward their waiting car. But Kira stopped, turning to face the cameras. "Actually, I do have something to say." Kyle looked at her in surprise. "This wasn't part of the plan. 6 months ago, I was homeless. My own mother threw me out because she was tired of taking care of me. I married a stranger because dying alone seemed worse than living as a lie." The crowd fell silent, cameras rolling. "I didn't know Kyle was rich. I didn't care. He showed me kindness when everyone else showed me the door. He saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself." Her voice got stronger, clearer. "People are going to say this is a fairy tale. Poor girl marries billionaire, lives happily ever after. But fairy tales don't have mothers who abandon their children. They don't have criminals trying to kill you. They don't have real blood on warehouse floors." Kyle's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "This isn't a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. It's messy and complicated and sometimes terrifying. But it's ours." She looked directly into the nearest camera. "To every young person out there who's been thrown away, who's been told they're worthless, you're not. You're worthy of love, of respect, of someone who sees your value even when you can't. Don't settle for less." The reporter closest to them recovered first. "What's next for you both?" Kyle stepped forward. "We're going to live. Quietly, if people will let us. And we're going to help other people who've been where Kira was. No one should have to choose between freezing and marrying a stranger." Back at their hotel that night, they finally had silence. Real silence, not the careful quiet of hiding. Kira stood at the window, looking out at the Detroit skyline. "Do you think we'll ever have normal?" Kyle came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "Define normal." She leaned back against his chest. "Grocery shopping. Arguing about what to watch on TV. Boring stuff." "Sounds perfect." She turned in his arms, hands sliding up his chest. "What about the company? Fortress Security. Victor's dead. The threat's over. I can go back to running it properly." He paused. "If you want me to." "What I want," she whispered, pulling his head down to hers, "is for you to do whatever makes you happy. You make me happy." Their kiss tasted like freedom. "Have you ever discovered strength you didn't know you had when someone you cared about was in danger? Share your story below." The homeless girl who learned to survive on instinct had just outplayed a billionaire criminal, and her husband had never been more attracted to her brilliance. Flash photography exploded like lightning as they emerged from the FBI field office, no longer hiding, but standing together in the harsh light of public scrutiny. But 3 days later, Sitting in their Detroit hotel suite, the real work began. Fortress Security stock is up 40% since the news broke, Kyle said, scrolling through his laptop. Apparently, coming back from the dead is good for business. Kira curled beside him on the couch, wearing one of his shirts and nothing else. After months of hiding, the luxury of lazy mornings felt revolutionary. The interview requests are insane, she said, flipping through a stack of messages. Ellen, Oprah, 60 Minutes. Everyone wants our story. Do you want to tell it? She considered this. 6 months ago, the idea of being on television would have terrified her. Now, after facing down armed criminals, talk show hosts seemed manageable. Maybe, but on our terms. Kyle's laptop chimed with an encrypted message. He frowned, opening it. What is it? Kira asked. Job offer. The Department of Defense wants Fortress Security to consult on a new cybersecurity project. He looked up at her. $100 million contract. That's good, right? It means moving back to Silicon Valley. Press conferences, board meetings, the whole corporate world. Kyle closed the laptop. Everything I was running from. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Remember what you told me the night we met? About figuring it out together. I remember. So let's figure it out. She straddled his lap, hands framing his face. What do you actually want to do with your life? Kyle's hands settled on her hips. Build something that matters. Use the technology to help people, not just make money. Then do that. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Kira's voice was firm. You're Kyle Abramson. You built a billion-dollar company in your 20s. You can rebuild it however you want. She was right. He could see it in her eyes. The same fierce determination that had carried her through homelessness, through fear, through everything. What about you? What do you want? Kira's smile turned wicked. Right now? I want you to stop talking about work. She kissed him deep and demanding. He groaned against her mouth, hands sliding under his shirt to find bare skin. Here, he asked. Here. Now. Before the world decides it owns us again. They made love on the hotel couch with the Detroit skyline watching through floor-to-ceiling windows. Desperate and tender, claiming each other all over again. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Kira traced patterns on Kyle's chest. I have an idea, she said quietly. Tell me, what if we don't go back to Silicon Valley? What if we stay here in Detroit and build something new? Kyle lifted his head to look at her. In Detroit. Think about it. This city knows about rebuilding. It knows about taking something broken and making it stronger. Her eyes lit up with possibility. We could create jobs here. Real jobs, not just tech stuff. Manufacturing, training programs, opportunities for people like me. People like you. People who've been written off, told they don't matter. Kira sat up, excitement making her voice rise. Your technology, my understanding of what people really need. We could change lives. Kyle stared at her. In 6 months, she'd gone from survival mode to strategic thinking. From victim to visionary. You want to revolutionize an entire industry. Why not? You did it once already. He pulled her down for another kiss, deeper this time. Have I mentioned lately that I'm crazy about your brain? Show me how crazy. They were interrupted by Kyle's phone buzzing. Text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your resurrection. Your story has inspired me to come forward with my own truth. We should meet. Someone who knew your father. Kyle showed Kira the message. She read it twice, frowning. Your father died when you were 12. That's what I thought. What if he didn't? Kyle stared at the message. After everything they'd been through, he should have been ready for more family secrets. But this felt different, bigger. There's only one way to find out. As news anchors debated their story on every channel, Kyle turned to Kira with a question that made her heart race. We can go anywhere, do anything now. What do you want our real life to look like? Her answer would shock him more than anything they'd survived. If you had unlimited resources, what problem would you solve first? What legacy would you want to leave? Tell me in the comments. She'd spent her life surviving other people's choices. Now she was ready to build something that would help others survive theirs. The foundation headquarters rose from Detroit's downtown like hope made concrete. Every brick a testament to what happens when survival becomes strategy. 6 months after the warehouse confrontation, Kira stood in the marble lobby of what used to be an abandoned office building. Now it housed the Abramson Foundation for Economic Opportunity, and she was its president. The architect says the community center will be ready by Christmas, Kyle said, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. 50 beds, job training programs, and direct placement with our corporate partners. Kira accepted the coffee, steam warming her face. And the tech training? Full curriculum. Coding, cybersecurity, digital marketing. 6-month programs with guaranteed job placement. Kyle's eyes lit up the way they always did when he talked about the foundation. We're partnering with Ford, GM, and 3 other major manufacturers. Good jobs, not just survival jobs. Through the windows, they could see construction crews working on the next phase. What had once been empty lots and broken dreams was becoming something else, something alive. The press conference is in an hour, Kira said. Are you ready for the questions about us? Are you? She considered this. A year ago, the idea of facing cameras would have sent her running. Now, after everything, it felt like just another challenge to conquer. I'm ready for anything. The press conference drew national attention, not just because of Kyle's resurrection story, but because of what they were building together. Why Detroit? Asked a reporter from CNN. Kira stepped to the microphone. She'd gotten comfortable with public speaking, found her own voice instead of trying to copy someone else's. Because Detroit understands what we're trying to do. This city has been counted out, written off, told it was finished. But look around. She gestured toward the windows, where construction cranes dotted the skyline. Detroit didn't die. It evolved. Some critics say you're just gentrifying the city, pushing out long-time residents. Kyle fielded this one. Every person we hire is from Detroit. Every program participant lives here. We're not bringing in outside workers. We're training local people for local jobs. What about your personal relationship? Asked a woman from People magazine. How has sudden wealth changed your marriage? Kira and Kyle exchanged a look. They'd rehearsed this answer, but standing here, surrounded by everything they'd built together, the words felt different. We didn't fall in love because of money, Kira said. We fell in love because we saw something in each other that the rest of the world missed. That hasn't changed. If anything, Kyle added, having resources just means we can help more people find what we found. Seconde chance. New beginnings. Hope. After the press conference, they escaped to Kyle's office on the top floor. The space was modern but warm, with Detroit artwork on the walls and a view of the river. I have something for you, Kyle said, pulling a small box from his desk drawer. Kira raised an eyebrow. We're already married. I know, but we got married for survival. I want to marry you for love. He opened the box. Inside was a simple band, white gold with a single diamond. Beautiful, but not flashy. Kira Chun? Sorry, Kira Abramson. Will you marry me? Again? For real this time? She took the ring, sliding it onto her finger next to the plain band they'd bought at a courthouse 6 months ago. Only if you promise we'll never be boring. I promise we'll never be boring. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, tasting like coffee and promises. She melted against him, hands fisting in his shirt. Lock the door, she whispered against his mouth. Here, our foundation, our office, our rules. Kyle locked the door, then returned to find Kira perched on the edge of his desk, skirt hiked up, eyes dark with want. I love your brain, he growled, stepping between her knees. Show me. They made love on his desk with the Detroit skyline as witness, claiming this space, this life, this future they were building together. Later, as they straightened their clothes and tried to look professional again, Kira caught sight of something that made her freeze. Kyle, what? She pointed to the pregnancy test sitting on his desk, forgotten in their passion. 2 pink lines stared back at them. We're gonna need a bigger house. Kyle's expression went from confusion to shock to pure joy in the span of 3 seconds. Are you sure? Pretty sure. Morning sickness doesn't lie. He lifted her off the desk, spinning her around the office as she laughed. What does it mean to break a cycle of hurt and start something beautiful? Share time when you turn pain into purpose in the comments below. The girl who once had nothing was about to give life to everything that mattered. And this time, her mother's tears would be real. The nursery overlooked the Detroit River, city lights twinkling like stars as they painted constellations on the ceiling of their future child's room. A little higher on the left, Kira called from her position on the couch, feet propped up on pillows. At 7 months pregnant, she'd been banned from ladder duty. Kyle adjusted the stencil, paintbrush in hand. "How's this?" "Perfect." The room was coming together beautifully. Gender-neutral yellow walls, hand-built furniture Kyle had insisted on making himself, and books lining every available shelf. "She's going to be spoiled," Kira said, rubbing her rounded belly. "He's going to be loved," Kyle corrected, climbing down from the ladder. They'd agreed not to find out the gender, wanting at least one surprise left in their very public lives. The media attention had calmed down, but interest in their story never fully went away. A knock at the front door interrupted their domestic moment. "I'll get it," Kyle said, but Kira was already struggling to her feet. "I'm pregnant, not helpless." The woman standing on their doorstep looked familiar, but different. Thinner, older, with nervous hands and genuine tears in her eyes. Bubby. Kira's mother stood there holding a small wrapped gift, looking nothing like the manipulative woman who tried to profit from Kyle's fake death. "Mom," Kira's voice was carefully neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I came to apologize. Really apologize this time." Kyle appeared behind Kira, protective instincts activated. But Kira held up a hand, letting her know she could handle this. "I am listening." "Can I come in?" "Please." Kira considered this. The last time she trusted her mother, it had nearly gotten them all killed. But something was different now. The desperation was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine regret. "Okay, but Kyle stays." They sat in the living room, Kira on the couch with Kyle beside her, her mother in the chair across from them. The gift sat unopened on the coffee table. "I'm gonna go to therapy," her mother began. "After what happened in that warehouse, after seeing what I almost lost, I realized I needed help." "What kind of help?" "The kind that makes you face what you've done to the people you love." Her mother's voice cracked. "I threw you away, Kira. My own daughter. I was so angry at your father for leaving, so angry at my life, that I took it out on you." Kyle's hand found Kira's, squeezing gently. "Why now?" Kira asked. "Why apologize now?" "Because you're about to become a mother, and I can't stand the thought of you hating me the way I let myself hate you." The words hung in the air between them. Outside, Detroit hummed with evening traffic, life continuing while their world shifted. "I don't hate you," Kira said quietly. "I used to, but hate takes too much energy. Can you forgive me?" Kira looked at Kyle, then back at her mother. "I can try, but it's going to take time. And things have to be different. Anything, whatever you need. Boundaries, respect. No more showing up when you need something. I understand. And you have to understand that Kyle and I are a family now. What we say goes." Her mother nodded eagerly. "Of course." Kira reached for the gift, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a small knitted blanket, soft yellow yarn with tiny elephants around the border. "I made it myself," her mother said. "I know it's not much. It's beautiful." And it was imperfect, but clearly made with love. The first gift her mother had ever given her that didn't come with strings attached. "There's something else," her mother said, voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Something about your father I never told you. Something that explains why I was so scared of loving you." Kira went still. "What about him? He didn't just leave us, baby. He was murdered by his business partner, someone who wanted what he'd built." The room spun. Kyle's hand tightened on hers. "What are you talking about?" "Your father was Marcus Chun. He founded Chun Digital Solutions in the 90s. Made millions before anyone knew what the internet could become." Her mother's tears were falling freely now. "He was killed when you were 2, made to look like a car accident. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was terrified they'd come for you too. So I moved us, changed our names, tried to disappear. But poverty and fear, they eat you alive from the inside." Kira stared at her mother, processing. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He'd been taken from them. What was his partner's name? Reeves. Victor Reeves. The same man who tried to kill Kyle, who'd held them in that warehouse. "He's dead," Kyle said quietly. "Victor's dead." Her mother looked up, hope and relief warring in her expression. then it's over. It's over. Sometimes the people who hurt us lead us exactly where we need to be. If someone's pain led you to your purpose, share that story in the comments. Learning your father was the tech mogul who inspired your husband's career wasn't coincidence. It was destiny writing itself across 2 generations. The hospital room filled with golden morning light as their daughter took her first breath, tiny fists reaching toward parents who would never throw her away. "She's perfect," Kyle whispered, tears streaming down his face as the doctor placed their baby on Kira's chest. 8 pounds, 2 ounces of pure miracle. Dark hair like her mother's, but Kyle's nose and stubborn chin. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, preparing the birth certificate. Kira looked down at their daughter, then up at Kyle. They discussed names for months, but could never decide. Now, holding her, the answer seemed obvious. "Hope," Kira said. "Hope Chin Abramson." "Hope Chin Abramson," the nurse repeated, writing it down. "Beautiful name." Kyle kissed Kira's forehead, then gently touched Hope's tiny hand. Their daughter's fingers wrapped around his immediately, holding on tight. "She knows her daddy," Kira said softly. "She knows she's safe." Outside the hospital room, their extended family waited. Kyle's business partners had become like brothers over the past year. The foundation staff treated them like celebrities. And in the corner, looking nervous but determined, sat Kira's mother. She'd been different since that night in the nursery. Therapy was working. She showed up when invited, respected boundaries, and had even started volunteering at the foundation's job training programs. "Can we come in?" her mother asked, peeking around the door. "Come meet your granddaughter." The next few hours passed in a blur of visitors, photographs, and paperwork. But as evenings settled over Detroit, it was just the 3 of them again. Hope slept in the clear hospital bassinet, perfect and peaceful. Kyle sat beside Kira's bed, both of them staring at their daughter like she might disappear if they looked away. "I keep thinking about your father," Kyle said quietly. "What about him?" "Marcus Chun was my inspiration. When I was starting Fortress Security, I read everything he'd written about digital privacy and protection. His work laid the foundation for everything I built." Kira turned to look at him. "Really? I have his photo in my old office in Silicon Valley. Had no idea you were his daughter. And Victor killed him to steal his work, which led to everything else. Your mother running, you ending up homeless, us meeting." Kyle shook his head. "It's like the universe was writing our story before we were born." "You think my dad would approve?" Kyle looked at Hope, then back at Kira. "I think he'd be proud of the woman you became, the mother you're going to be, and the empire we're building. I think he'd love that we're using technology to help people instead of just making money." The foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams. 3 locations now, with plans for 5 more. Job placement rates above 90%. Young people who've been written off were now leading teams, starting families, buying houses. And it was just the beginning. "What's next for us?" Kira asked. Kyle considered this. A year ago, they'd been hiding in a cabin, afraid for their lives. Now they had a daughter, a mission, and a love that had survived everything. More of this. More helping people. More family. He grinned. Maybe a little brother or sister for Hope in a few years. "Let me recover from this one first." They laughed, the sound mixing with Hope's soft breathing. Through the window, Detroit sparkled with possibility. Somewhere in those lights were young people just like Kira had been. Thrown away, counted out, surviving on hope and stubbornness. Tomorrow, the foundation would help some of them find their way. Next month, more would follow. Next year, even more. "I have something to tell you," Kira said, taking Kyle's hand. "What?" "I love you. Really love you. Not because you saved me. Not because you're rich, but because you saw me when I couldn't see myself. I love you too, for the same reasons and about a million others." "Like what?" "Like the way you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. The way you make me want to be better. The way you turn every room you enter into home." Hope stirred in her bassinet, tiny face scrunching up. "I think someone's hungry," Kira said. As Kyle gently lifted their daughter and placed her in Kira's arms, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. A fake marriage that became real love. A survival strategy that became a life mission. Two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. If this story of transformation touched your heart, remember, sometimes the most beautiful thing you can build is a life so magnificent that the people who tried to break you become footnotes in your success story.